Uh, Good morning, everyone. And welcome to ODI Global, to everyone here in London today and those online. My name is Max Mendefarra. I am Principal Research Fellow at the International Economics Development Group here at ODI Global. And I am also the technical lead of one of our programs, the program supporting investment and trade in Africa program that we will be hearing about later. This is a program supported by the generous support of the UK government from the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. We are gathering here today for an important and highly discussion on unlocking Nigerian digital economic potential, a dialogue on AfCFTA and UK trade and investment. This event will underscore the importance of UK-Nigeria economic relations and the transformative power of trade and investment. We have a goal for today, we hope we achieve it, is to explore concrete pathways for investment and partnership, building on the collaborative work we have undertaken in Nigeria, which we will discuss later in the program. To formally open our proceedings, it's my pleasure to invite Deputy Chief Executive and Managing Director of ODI Global, Hans-Peter Lankes, for his welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Max. And welcome, Honorable Minister, Your Excellency, Ambassador. Great to see you all for this discussion. At ODI, we have a mission to work to inspire action on injustice and on inequality. And a core part of that mission is to help promote sustainable, inclusive development. And what we're discussing here today is falls right into that category. It is the opportunity that Nigeria has with the AfCFTA, and especially with the digital chapter being named the champion for the digital chapter of the AfCFTA, to boost growth, to take advantage of the opportunities that the continental market is going to offer. And so we're going to be discussing where we stand with the digital chapter of the AfCFTA. We're going to be discussing about how Nigeria might be able to take advantage of this opportunity, and so hopefully come out with a better understanding of what the opportunity for the private sector is and how best to take advantage of them going forward. With this, now we have the privilege also of having the ambassador here, the High Commissioner, Ambassador Mohammed Madugu. And I would like to first turn to Ambassador Madugu for a few words before then asking the Honorable Minister to give us a keynote speech. Ambassador, please.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, Excellency. With due respect, let me and Honorable Minister Dr. Jumoke Oduwale, MFR, Ben Ansley, Deputy Trade Commissioner, African Department of Business and Trade, and Peter Lex, Managing Director, ODI, resource persons, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to stand before you today, united in purpose and shared vision, as we explore the enduring economic ties between Nigeria and the United Kingdom. Despite our busy schedules, our presence here demonstrates our commitment to fostering stronger bilateral and economic relations, as well as uncovering opportunities for mutual benefit between the two friendly nations, Nigeria and UK. The partnership between Nigeria and UK has endured for several decades, built on historic, cultural, and commercial connections. However, this forum is not about emphasizing the past, but about shaping a more prosperous future defined by partnership, innovation, and mutual growth. These principles culminate in the Enhanced Trade and Investment Partnership, ETIP, signed on February 13, 2024 to strengthen bilateral relations between our nations. Ladies and gentlemen, Nigeria, Africa's most populous nation and largest economy, is rich in resources and possesses immense potential. Our vibrant creative sectors and technological advancement, coupled with government renewed hope agenda, demonstrate our dedication to economic reform that will transform Nigeria into an attractive destination for sustainable trade and investment. The theme of today's discussion, Unlocking Nigeria's Digital Economic Potential, a dialogue on the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, and UK trade and investment is particularly timely, given the current administration's effort to diversify the economy beyond oil reliance. Nigeria's digital economy is experiencing substantial public and private investment through various policies of improved startups, infrastructure, and financial access. Key initiatives such as the National Digital Economy Policy and Strategy and the National Digital Innovation and Entrepreneurship Policy have been established to leverage digital technology for economic expansion, job creation, and fostering innovation. These policies aim at accelerating Nigeria's transition to a digital hub by strengthening entrepreneurship and creating a supportive environment for startups. We recognize the United Kingdom as a key partner in this journey, from financial services, technology, clean energy, education, agriculture, and digital transformation. We invite our UK partners to explore the sectors where your expertise and investment can make a meaningful impact. Nigeria is open to business and is continuously reforming, modernizing, and investing in infrastructure that facilitates smoother and safer trade. It is essential to highlight that Nigeria offers many investment opportunities, primarily as the renewed hope agenda promotes economic diversification and digital transformation. These opportunities are present in various sectors, including real estate and infrastructure. As the urban population continues to grow, manufacturing and industrialization, addressing the demand for local substitutes, healthcare, and biotech, with approximately 1.5 billion USD spent annually on outbound medical tourism, creative economy, with Nigeria's Nollywood being the second largest film industry globally, and a vibrant youth culture in music and digital content. Other sectors include financial services and insurance, particularly targeting informal and MSME segment, tourism and hospitality, which benefits from our cultural diversity, and agribusiness and agri-tech, with over 70% of Nigerians engaged in agriculture. Together, we can build resilient value chain, create jobs, and unlock trade flows and benefits for our nations. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let us reaffirm our commitment to economic cooperation guided by trust, transparency, and a long-term vision. I owe you a great deal of thanks, gratitude, and many thanks for attending the program, for giving me the privilege to be here. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for giving us the privilege of hosting you here. And as you say, Nigeria is an incredibly dynamic economy, and anyone who's been to Lagos has felt that very palpably, that dynamism, and it's particularly true in the digital sector. So now with the opportunity of the AfCFTA coming up, how best to unlock that potential, take advantage of that market? How can the UK business, UK finance, UK government be a partner in that endeavor? And with that, Honourable Minister, I would like to turn to you for a keynote speech. Minister Jumoke Oduwole, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, is the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment of Nigeria. And with that, I hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Hans. Good morning, everybody. First of all, let me apologize for keeping you all waiting. And actually commend my colleague, Efe Barber. We didn't get home till 4 a.m. We got stuck in Spain because of the air traffic control strike from France. So 3 tickets later, after several cancellations, here we are. So Efe, thank you very much. So there's only really so much the human body can take. It's been an interesting week and a productive one. So Ben, thank you for making it twice in a week. And thank you for coordinating this. The High Commissioner, Acting High Commissioner, Commissioner for Tech and Innovation, Lagos State. And really just several friends and colleagues. Sally, who is a friend of the house and ODI. Let me just say that it's really a pleasure to be here today with ODI Global for this timely and strategic conversation on unlocking Nigeria's digital economic potential through trade and investment under the AfCFTA framework. So I'd like to commend ODI Global for convening this important dialogue. You have situated a tangible support for Nigeria's ecosystem over the years, and your consistency in this particular area. I know your colleagues very well. I see them on the ground oftentimes, and so I'd like to recognize that. And so in supporting Investment and Trade in Africa program, your technical guidance in developing Nigeria's national digital trade strategy, ODI's partnership has been a valuable force multiplier, contributing meaningfully to both policy and practice. So as we're aware, Nigeria is Africa's largest economy and home to over 200 million people. And what does that mean at this defining moment? Under the visionary leadership of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, we have embarked on bold and difficult reforms to stabilize and reposition our economy. And I think even the harshest critics would agree that we've been able in the last 24 months to stabilize the Nigerian economy, removing of subsidies, unifying exchange rates, overhauling fiscal and monetary policies. Everybody would know by now the important tax architectural framework that was signed into law the week today. The decisions have not been easy, and the painful effects are still being felt at the bottom of the pyramid. But we know that with continued investor confidence growing, and in this particular sector where our Nigerian youth are competitive and tech natives, the best is surely yet to come. We're at an inflection point. So the early results are encouraging. In 2024, Nigeria became Africa's largest interregional trading nation, with trade flows reaching $18.4 billion and more than double from the previous year. Our non-oil exports surged by nearly 25% in Q1 of 2025, and our sovereign ratings have been upgraded by both Fitch and Moody's. So that lowers our cost of long-term capital. And so all this coming together, I know from previous discussions, even earlier this week, that investor interest and confidence from the UK side, particularly to this digital space and creative space, has been increasing, in addition to the more traditional and established areas that UK businesses have partnered with Nigerian businesses, vice versa, for a number of years. And so the question remains not whether UK businesses should invest in Nigeria, but indeed where and how they choose to partner in unlocking Nigeria's next phase of growth. So today, we'd like to focus on the AfCFTA. It's a market of 1.4 billion people and the largest free zone in the world, $3.4 trillion combined GDP. And so for Nigeria, AfCFTA is not just a trade agreement, it's a platform for competitiveness, for skill, and for transformation. So as Africa's digital trade champion for AfCFTA, we actually have this position along with South Africa and Kenya, but we are leading at the forefront of this for obvious reasons. Out of all the unicorns in Nigeria, about 50% of them are of Nigerian extraction, all the unicorns in Africa on the continent. And we continue to lead in other areas like fintech, just several areas in the digital space. So Nigeria's efforts to develop and implement the digital trade protocol and its annexes and to shape the rules that will govern e-commerce, data flow, cross-border digital services across the continent are fully ongoing. We're working very closely with the AfCFTA Secretariat, and those plans, I already presented them in Kinshasa when the last meeting of the African Ministers of Trade, and again, the consolidated work plan in Lusaka when we had the first inaugural AfCFTA Digital Trade Forum. Just to chip in that the next one will be holding in Lagos, Nigeria next year. So this role reflects our commitment to building an inclusive and innovation-driven economy. Now, the digital economy already contributes significantly to Nigeria's GDP, with over 122 million active internet subscriptions and a youthful tech-savvy population. We're positioning Nigeria as a regional hub for fintechs, e-commerce, creative industries, and BPOs. Our BPO industry alone is valued at nearly $1 billion, and our e-commerce market surpassed 8 billion in 2024. So Nigeria's digital economy is one of the most vibrant. Let me see. For digital infrastructure, including broadband, cloud, and data centers, the investment opportunity is over 14.8 billion potential for the next 5 years. So particularly whether it's digital public infrastructure or other modes of infrastructure, that's also an excellent business opportunity for UK investors. And today's conversation underscores the strategic importance of deepening Nigeria-UK trade and investment relations. As I said earlier, the UK remains one of Nigeria's largest investors and trading partners, with bilateral trade value at over £6 billion in 2024. Just to give an example of one of the areas where we're positioning for AfCFTA and globally, we recently relaunched the National Talent Export Program. That's our flagship initiative under Mr. President to train, certify, and export high-value digital services. Nigerian talent pipeline is basically endless, and just to scale them up to a position where they're in global demand right from home. So NATEP is designed to match Nigerian professionals with global demand, particularly in areas like software engineering, digital design, and customer service. So for UK businesses, this means access to a pipeline of skilled English-speaking professionals, competitively priced and globally oriented. And to harness this potential, we are committed to building a regulatory and investment environment that is modern, fair, and forward-looking. We're also deepening bilateral mechanisms with the UK government. So the UK-Nigeria Enhanced Trade and Investment Partnership, the ETIP, and leveraging on UK developing countries trading scheme to boost Nigeria's non-oil exports into the UK market. So that's a vast portfolio, and the meetings coming up later this year, or at the most Q1 of next year, we'll be deepening that relationship. We've had a lot of vibrant and positive conversations with Richard and his team back in Nigeria. And we have the platforms, we have the people, and we're layering the foundation for a new era of trade and investment anchored on value creation, inclusion, and digital transformation. So the year is half gone, and we have all just gone into H2, and what that means for getting our deliverables out before the end of the year. So let's move from dialogue to delivery and from agreements to action. That's really my call to action for today. We have the platforms, we have the people, and we're laying the foundation for a new era of trade and investment. And so with that, I say thank you for your attention. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Honorable Musa. I think that call to action is a great basis for the discussion that we're going to have. We're now going to be turning to our panel here and have a little discussion within the panel, and then in the end open it up. It would be great if on the panel we could pick up on some of these key points that were made by the minister. I have to say, you said very gracious words about ODI and our work in Nigeria. In fact, it's the Nigerian government that has been creating these conditions to be an effective partner. So we experience it quite up close, the sort of the change that has been coming over these past few years, and that has been very effectively tackling some of the very deep-seated issues that the Nigerian economy has. I've been interacting with Nigeria for 20, 30 years, with the IMF, with the World Bank, with the IFC, and there were always those issues that were sort of the elephant in the room, and that made a business somewhat difficult. And you really have made a difference with your government over the past couple of years, and so we've seen that up close. So can we look at that environment that's being created? Can we look at the opportunities that the AfCFTA is going to create, and discuss how sort of the practicalities of engaging with especially the digital economy in Nigeria? And for that, I'm delighted to introduce our distinguished panelists. I'm going to be starting with Max Mendes, our very own Max Mendes-Para, who is the Principal Research Fellow and Technical Lead for ODI Global's CEDA program that the Minister referred to, and who brings deep expertise on digital trade policy and our work on the ground in Nigeria. We'll then turn to Ben Ainsley, the Deputy Trade Commissioner for Africa in the Department for Business and Trade in the UK. And Ben is going to provide insights into the UK government's strategic support for trade and investment in Nigeria and across Africa. Then to Nicola, gosh, you have moved far away there. Nicola Watkinson, who is Managing Director International at the City UK, represents the UK's leading financial and professional services industry and its global trade relationships. And I understand you're deeply engaged in Nigeria as we speak to create help create the capital market and international hub. Then to Abhinav Sinha. Abhinav is Managing Director and Head of Technologies, Telecoms and Sustainable Industrials at British International Investment, BII. And Abhinav is going to discuss BII's investment in Nigeria, perhaps give us a little bit of perspective also on how you see these opportunities evolving for private investment. And then finally, turn to Lola Awaranti-Ekugo, the CEO of AfriBorder and member of the board of Trademark Africa, to provide in-depth insights into the digital trade landscape and the opportunities there. And with that, I'd like to dive straight into the discussion, and I'll ask Max to kick us off, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Johan Minister, for being here. I think I would like to start basically putting into context the importance of the digital trade protocol in Africa, and making some references to what the Minister was saying about the economic transformation that this can generate. By 2035, there's going to be 100,000 workers every day joining the labor market in Africa. Every day. These are people that are being born now. There will be the need of jobs for them. And the digital trade protocol, in addition to the AfCFTA in general, is aiming actually to delivering on this need. The digital trade protocol is a novel instrument within the AfCFTA that deals with aspects associated with harmonized regulations across the continent in relation to digital trade, such as cross-border data flows, cybersecurity, consumer protection, digital inclusion, infrastructure development, dispute resolution, national treatment, etc. The protocol includes some data governance obligations, such as cross-border data flows, data localization, but also includes provisions under what is called best endeavors. Implementation of these provisions, either those that are obligations of best endeavors, requires a wide range of policies beyond just gazetting provisions. It also about creating an enabling space in which this provision have a meaning and have an impact on the economy of the country. Nigeria wanted to give sense to this implementation and put it basically through a strategy that allows to benefit from the comparative advantage that Nigeria has, underlying comparative advantage that it has on the digital economy. So Nigeria wanted to use the implementation of the digital trade protocol as an instrument to support the digital trade sector widely. So this is where ODI and our CETA program came in. How is that we supported Nigeria? So we work with the Office of the Vice President and the Ministry of Trade, first to try to create some evidence around the impact of the digital trade protocol in Nigeria about the implementation. And what we found actually is that implementation of the digital trade protocol will generate income, GDP in Nigeria for an additional $90 billion a year. This is just a jump of more than 60% of the current GDP. Exports will grow by 12 billion one-off, and employment will also increase by similar magnitudes. If that is also put together with an investment in infrastructure that actually enabling that, those gains in terms of employment, in terms of exports, in terms of GDP could go as high as 60%. And just to illustrate what I said, 100,000 people, that number for Nigeria in 2035 are 15,000. So these are people every day that will need a job in Nigeria, and the implementation of the digital trade protocol will facilitate this. So we continue working on that and continue research it, and we said, well, what would be the sectors within Nigeria or at the areas where that will clearly materialize those potential gains? And we identified e-commerce, something that probably Nigeria is already powerful on that. Business processing outsourcing, BPOs, but also very important because it's a factor for that is the empowerment of women and youth. So clearly that is an economic factor in itself actually to facilitate the other areas. So our work basically focused on trying to see what are the instruments from the standard very digital that could be like enabling or addressing the AI governance to non-digital aspects, but it's extremely important, such as facilitating cross-border trading in more general sense. And as I said, we put in this as work that we have been doing to support Nigeria, actually women and youth as not just object, but in such, that they are extremely important because this is where they're going to come the jobs for the future. So in terms of what we sort of recommended in this work, I mean, there are a wide range of recommendations, but first, actually, we recommended actually the formulation of this digital trade strategy and a regulatory alignment to the digital trade protocol. But also we call for basically building trust, digital inclusion and infrastructure, and boost skill development and capacity build. And specifically within the build trust and digital inclusion and infrastructure, we definitely consider, and this is what we are expecting to continue supporting the government of Nigeria in relation to the first of making its digital payment systems to speak to the rest of the continent, these digital payment systems, to actually maximize the interoperability of all the digital payment systems across the continent, and also support the implementation of the digital identity system continentally compatible as well to facilitate the trade. This is when they're going to address the trust, the inclusion, and the infrastructure development that we think that is critical to, among other things, but particularly those elements that would be critical to make Nigeria, and particularly digital trade, the digital sector in Nigeria, to deliver on these challenges in terms of job creation.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Max. We have sort of some follow-up questions, but let's see what our time frame is for the moment. Let's turn to Ben. Ben, UK Deputy Trade Commissioner for Nigeria. Can you tell us a little bit about what the UK government is offering in terms of support for UK business to take advantage of these opportunities?
Thanks, Hans. Honourable Minister, lovely to see you again, and High Commissioner, pleasure to meet you. And thank you for this opportunity in this conversation. I think it comes at a really important time for a number of reasons, whether it be a very busy sort of Africa-focused week in London, which has been fantastic, and see many familiar faces from various events that have been hosted this week, to others, kind of what is happening on the UK government side, on the back of sort of new trade strategy being published and new industrial strategy that people might have seen in the past couple of weeks. And that really sets a vision for where this government wants to go over the next sort of 10 years or so. The other piece that I think is important for us, both internally, but I think also for industry as well, is a new critical mineral strategy that we're expecting sort of shortly. And to use a bit of jargon, it's currently in right round phase, which means it's going around Whitehall where everyone's sort of agreeing or disagreeing, and then we should get that fairly soon as well. I think that has been much needed. I think, if I'm honest, I think that will really help set the direction in a number of ways. I think to pivot a little bit more than onto the Nigeria context, and I'm conscious I've got 6 minutes to sum up our relationship. That might be a tall ask at most. So let me say a few things, and I'm happy to pick up in the conversation. And some of this the Honourable Minister mentioned already. The first thing is that we are incredibly proud of our sort of relationship with Nigeria, both whether it be the people level, whether it be the cultural level, or obviously the commercial level that we're here to talk about today. And I think, we're having this conversation, but I think it's easy to lose sight of the strong foundation that we have, right? It's a 7 billion trade relationship. We're really proud of we have a 25% market share of services into Nigeria, right? That's the volume of UK companies who are interested, operating, supporting, driving business, driving growth, driving jobs, paying for jobs every single day already. So we come at this from a really proud place and a proud start there. And when we look across our sort of other African partners and where we prioritize, Nigeria is absolutely front and center of that, and will absolutely remain that. On the AfCFTA side, again, we're really proud of the partnership with ODI and the work that's happening there, and also really commend the work that Nigeria is doing, in particular in the digital space. It really is absolutely at the forefront. And a long journey. We should get into that conversation today, but I think the progress that has already been made is really strong. The Minister and the High Commissioner already mentioned the enhanced trade partnerships. I won't dwell on that too long, but it is a really strong tool. And again, I think what is really testament again to the relationship is we don't have this agreement with any other African partner. We only have it with Nigeria. And I think that's with volumes about where we think the relationship is, but also where we think the relationship is going. And what is really important for us, and people who might have heard our Foreign Secretary speak in West Africa on Wednesday or so, is he uses the word partnership a lot. And it is, this is about a partnership, right? This is about using, your 8-point economic plan in order to identify what works for you, our growth plan, what works for us, right? And this is a win-win. We've chosen sectors based on that, right? Financial services, creative, it is win-win for both nations, driving jobs and growth for everybody. The other bit the Honourable Minister mentioned, which again we're proud of, but I do think there's more work to do, is the developing country trading scheme. I don't think, if I'm honest, on our side of the house, we have done enough to kind of publicise it, to push it, to show people the benefits. And I spend a lot of time on the road. This is not a particular Nigeria comment. I'm thinking of East African countries at this point, but I talk about it and people go, "What's that?" As if it's quite new, right? But as if it was launched sort of yesterday. And so I think there was much more that we can do. We've got a series of events, specifically with Nigeria, that the Minister kind of alluded to towards the end of the year. And some of the bits in the trade strategy that people might have seen as well is about sort of simplifying that process and making it easier. The offer of tariff-free access in the UK for all goods is incredibly strong, right? But I think there's more that we can do to help that, and then more that we can do to sort of how exporters are then landing into the UK, right? How do you find distributors? How do you make sure that you're meeting SBS standards or whatever it might be, right? How are we making sure that we're working with DEFRA to help avocado exporter or whatever it might be, reach various standards. I think there's more that we need to do there on our side of the house. But I think again, we'll start from sort of a strong place there. The other sort of program that again we sort of really heavily sort of promote and talk about, particularly in Lagos, is our Global Entrepreneurs Program. which is, how do you start scaling up startups and bringing them, to the city and bringing them to the UK. I won't give you the full sales pitch about the value of the UK tech industry, number of unicorns, and all that sort of thing. But that has been a really strong offer. We've seen a number of Nigerian startups getting onto that program, and that, whether it be visa facilitation, whether it be financing advice, that brings a whole plethora of packages and support in this space. There's sort of a link there as well to me to the kind of the IPO space, and and then the level of IPOs that we've seen from Nigeria on dual listing. And again, the dual listing part really important for us, right? It goes back to this kind of partnership piece that we were speaking about before, and there should be an announcement about a bank, which has either hit the press. I think I saw a bit in the Financial Times yesterday, or will hit the press on kind of Monday, about another Nigerian bank dual listing, which is, again, speaks volumes about where we are, but also kind of where we're going at the same time. I think there's then for me as well a really important kind of broad piece that just goes beyond just sort of, I guess this is the pure commercial, right, and goes into more the business environment. And I really must commend the Honourable Minister and all of the government for the reforms that have happened, right? As I made a speech on Tuesday, I think it was, and I said, not been easy but essential, I think was the language I used. And I think we're all aware of some of the complexities, some of the social challenges that has brought, but actually the drive and the vision to push those through and to continue to push them through. And this is a journey has been really positive, because that is what business worry about, right? That is what business, those reforms, and if they come through, that is what will help get more business in the plane at the end of the day, right? Because businesses just want stability and predictability. They want to know, even if they're paying X amount of tax, they might not agree with the number, but if they know that is the number, and that is the number over the 25-year business cycle or whatever they're operating on, then that gives them the confidence in that. So I really commend her. And on the same on my Foreign Office colleague side of the house, but still, all within the HMG sort of family, we've done a huge amount of sort of technical assistance and kind of support into that space as well, to help the Nigerian government. And again, that remains an open offer in whatever way is helpful. Maybe the final thing then I will just touch on before sort of handing over to a fellow panel member. It's just a little bit about mobilising capital, and I'll let my VII colleague speak in detail on his world in particular. But I think in particular things like PIDGE and InfraCredit have been absolutely kind of key enablers, both in terms of driving in to capital. And I think it's something like 60 million or 70 million for kind of latest free zone, these kind of numbers. But also I think what's more important for us is the message that sends to investors, to other investors, right? And therefore other investors kind of crowding in behind that, whether that be on this free zone or whether that be on kind of other sites. And it's giving investors that confidence that actually, we see the potential here, and some of our sort of credit agencies see the potential there as well. I have no idea how that was 6 minutes or 25 minutes. So let me pause there. Because I could talk about Nigeria and trade like literally all day. So I'm happy to pick up any of these comments or questions.
Well, you can stay on afterwards if you want to have the rest of the day. But you were pretty good at it. With that, we'll come back to you, I'm sure, but I'd like to turn to Nicola Watkinson.
Thank you.
As I said, Nicola, you're Managing Director of Citi UK. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit from the perspective of the private sector in the UK. How does that landscape present itself? What are the obstacles? How to take advantage of the opportunity?
Well, thank you very much, and it's terrific to be here, and thank you, Minister and High Commissioner, for the opportunity. I have the clock in front of me, so I will desperately try and make sure I stick to the 6 minutes. The Citi UK, we're a fully private sector organisation that represents the interests of financial and professional services. So you'll excuse me if what I will bring to the table is a much more hard-headed commercial approach to some of these topics. The first thing I'd like to say, though, Minister, is thank you for championing digital trade. In my past life, I worked with the Australian Foreign Service and had a number of postings overseas, and it's an incredibly hard job to put a minister in a high-vis jacket and a hard hat and then stand her outside a group of fintechs in a shared service, environment with a series of laptops. It just doesn't make as easy news and visible success as standing in front of a construction site or whatever. And yet the opportunity for growth is almost infinite if you start looking at digital trade. So in the industry, in financial services, in professional services from the UK, 85% of our exports are delivered digitally. And we see enormous potential for growth. Just to give you a few examples, in the UK, 2/3 of the jobs in our industry are now located outside of London. So this is a regional story. 50% of those exports are outside of London. And it's not even just the really big cities that you might know, like Manchester or Edinburgh or Birmingham. We now have cities like Warrington and Halifax and Salford that have, between 5,000 or 10,000 or 15,000 jobs in our industry. And that means that, when you translate that into Nigeria, which is obviously on a totally different scale, there's enormous potential to be able to take advantage of the growth opportunities that we see from the sort of digital free trade agreement. Fintech is obviously one of those, and what Ben probably was going to say if he'd been given one more minute. There were about 100 Nigerian tech companies over here for Tech Week. The Nigerian success story is extraordinary. And part of working together is to enable the capital to flow so that those companies can grow to the next level and become unicorns. And that's part of what my industry has to deliver. Equally back the other way is the opportunity for UK fintechs to take advantage of the growth in Nigeria. And there's a lot of work here around the payments, digital payments infrastructure that we see, financial platforms, work being done to launch an electronic know your customer and digital wallet offering. Lots around partnering with the local banks on their settlement processes, trade finance wallets. I could go on. Corporate bonds for green bonds for solar projects. There is a huge amount of opportunity for the UK to also come and grow and partner together with Nigeria. So I think, we see the opportunity to run in both directions. And we really look forward to Max doing all the hard work to put the protocols and everything in place to help to drive that forward. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is the money, because we need the capital to flow in order to be able to build the digital infrastructure that is needed, to be able to support the tech companies, to be able to grow, and to really start to drive the changes that are going on in Nigeria. And here I always say I have the least glamorous job of anybody on this panel. So if you think about it and if you want to get these companies to come in, and they may do this digitally, but you want them on the ground, so you need to bring them in first. One of the challenges is if you think about it like an airport. When most of us go to an airport, the things that really attract us, it's the duty-free shopping that we can do there, it's the cafes we can go into before we board, it's how fast the check-in process is, but none of this would work if you didn't have the runways. They're not the most thing that you look at when you go into an airport, but you need the runways for the planes to land. And that's the bit that I do. I build the runways. And in order to do that, you need to be able to address the underlying business environment. And Minister, you talked about how committed you are to creating sort of a more modernized regulatory system that's transparent. And we're seeing that in the work we're doing around the establishment of the Lagos International Financial Centre. At the moment, we all know there are some cracks in the runway. It's already there, but it's not a smooth landing as it could be. And whether those are regulatory issues around the complexity between overlapping regulation between state and national levels, and some of the long timeframes to get your licenses in place, whether it's some of the challenges of dispute resolution and being able to have that investor certainty around judicial rulings. There's even sort of a lack of financial market infrastructure in some areas, in particularly around the capital markets, which remain a little bit shallow, and some other issues that companies face when they want to do business. And I think, thinking about how we solve for those is one of the ways in which we'll allow capital to flow. Because, someone always describes to me, capital is like water. It just flows to the easiest path that it can get down the hill. So we need to create that pathway that makes it easy for the capital to come in. And so the work of the International Financial Centre is really looking at that. It's really about trying to think about how do we enable these companies to come in? How do we enable the BPOs to be able to set up their operations in Nigeria, the fintechs and the other tech companies to raise the capital that they need, the e-commerce work that needs to be able to go on. And where we really see enormous opportunity is to be able to really just fix the runway or the plumbing, however you want to look at it. And that might be around some of the international compliance and standards that we're looking at the moment to make sure that we can address some compliance issues for Nigeria around governance, corporate governance. It's around the supporting infrastructure development and new public-private partnerships. Looking particularly at digital infrastructure, which we think is going to be a huge driver for growth. And skills, Minister, you mentioned before, and High Commissioner, the importance of building the talent pipeline. Nigeria has such an amazing pool of talent. Being able to create more of that can focus in financial and professional services, I think will be really important. And the UK has been a huge beneficiary of Nigerian talent, so we need to be able to reciprocate and build it at home. So those are the points that I really wanted to make. I think there's an enormous opportunity. I think we can land a lot more planes, and I think there's a huge potential for growth through digital trade that we can capture through this work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola. A lot of interesting ideas that you put them in very vivid pictures. I think we will pick up on that again. I just want to emphasize one thing that you said, which is the two-way nature. Interestingly, it's two-way investment, it's two-way trade that grows the most successfully. Don't focus on one leg of this, focus on both. Anyway, with that, I'd like to turn to Abhinav. Abhinav, with BII, you've been investing in Nigeria for a long time. You're focusing on the technology, telecoms, sustainable industrials. Tell us a little bit where the opportunity is from your perspective.
Well, thank you very much. And Honorable Minister, Excellency, I mean, it's a great opportunity to come and share some of my thoughts with you. So I worked with BII, previously known as CDC. We've been investing in Africa for 76 years now, and in Nigeria specifically for a very long period as well. We have a portfolio of about $800 million in Nigeria, and we're quite delighted. It's moved up from 600 to 800 in the last year, which is a credit to the stability that's been there in the macro in Nigeria over the last year or so. Look, for us, Nigeria is what we call a powerhouse market, right? And for all the reasons that the minister had stated and others, that it's got the scale, right? It's large, and the value of scale is one, that it's a big market. But the other value of scale is that the investment you do in infrastructure, you can apportion over a very large number of users, and therefore operate at low price points. Right? And so for us, Nigeria is a very interesting market, the most similar to other large markets we've seen, like a China or in India, just given the scale advantage. There's been reference to the big demographic bulge. Young people, they tend to be more tech savvy. If directed properly, it's a great source of talent and advantage. For BII, the nuance we see is Nigeria has the best entrepreneurs in Africa, and potentially the best entrepreneurs in the world. They are very resilient, extremely pragmatic, willing to work hard, find solutions. Many of them live in London, which is also very, very, very good for us, because we can then spend a lot more time with them. So these are the big advantages of Nigeria. There is reference to Nollywood. I think while it's we are just about starting to understand the power of that creative, dominance that potentially Nigeria can have. In the future, everything that people do, whether it's buying something or, having a view on a topic is driven by the creative arts. Nowadays, people just don't want watch sports. They'll watch it, they'll comment on it, they'll potentially bet on it, they will engage with their friends on it. They don't just go to a shop and buy it. There are influencers and so on. So that is a really powerful asset that Nigeria has, which over time I can see that becoming a big force multiplier. So look, we're very excited with Nigeria. In terms of issues, again, I think in our discussion, and Nicola mentioned a few, I think Ben mentioned a few, Max a few, but I'll tell you quickly a story, not really a story, it's something which investors in the tech space have been talking about for about 20 years. In the early 2000s, China was starting to really take off. And there is a firm, Sequoia, and there's a partner called Wang there, who came up with this thing called the Wang trifecta, where he said, look, when three things combine, the markets take off. And these three things are cheap handsets, cheap data pricing, and frictionless transaction. And when this thing will happen, the markets will really take off. And that's what happened in China. And you had big companies like Alibaba and Tencent, and more recently TikTok and so on come up. When these big companies come up, it creates monetization for employees who then go and invest again. And so you can almost, in China, track all the unicorns back to Alibaba or back to these 2 or 3 initial successes. The same trifecta of cheap handsets, cheap data, and frictionless transaction happened in India about 2018 with the digital ID and the payment systems that Maxim spoke about, and then the cheap handsets. And in Nigeria, the data is actually quite cheap. And it's as BII and then CDC, we had invested in Cellfell in the late 90s, early 2000. That whole mobile thing has done really well. And so the cost of data is cheap. We do need to work on data centers and so on at scale, but handset is something that is not cheap, especially smartphones. And the days of feature phones and those are gone. I mean, if you really want to use the power of internet, you need to have smartphones available at about $30, $35. So that's a big intervention point for the government, where you can actually negotiate with manufacturers and create situations of maybe assembly and so on. But that's a big intervention point. And look, the third is something where work is going on. How can you do KYC digitally and fast? How can you do how can that identity be sort of seamless and done digitally? When that happens, Nigeria can build further on its great entrepreneurs, already existing unicorns, fintech ecosystem, and become very dominant. And you will see the real power of scale. Now, very quickly, I'll give you maybe 2 quick examples of our investments. I'm conscious I'm running into 6 minutes. So the 2 examples, and then one point which my team from Lagos has insisted after a lot of brainstorming that I bring to this panel. So the 2 examples are MoneyPoint. MoneyPoint is a payments company. It works on the fact that Africa and Nigeria is all about SMEs. I mean, that's really the business model. And this makes payment frictionless for them. Customers can come in, do cash in and cash out at small retail points. These retail points are run by very small entrepreneurs, very often women. The rails of the payment has been created by MoneyPoint. The founder, Tosin, lives in London, but obviously spends most of his time in Nigeria building this business. It does $10 billion of transaction every month, highly profitable business. So at some point, it should come to the city from a listing perspective. So that's one example. And we mobilized capital here. We were the first million, then we did another round of 4, we went up to 10, we then stopped. And the next 75 million has come from Google and DPI and a few others. And we will keep sort of supporting this. Second example is a business called Trade Depot. Trade Depot digitizes transactions, retail transactions. So unlike many other markets in Nigeria, in the upcountry regions, it makes no economic sense for the Unilevers, the Nestlés of the world to provide products. But with Trade Depot, because they have scale and they aggregate purchases from suppliers and they use technology, they're able to supply products all over the country. Their supply points are run again mostly by them and small micro entrepreneurs, small SMEs. This is also in North India, and it's an investment we're very proud of. It's, I wouldn't say a unicorn yet, it's still in that path. But just this gives you a flavor of some of our investments. Obviously, with 800 million, we do a lot of other power products, we do big agri, but I want to mention these two. And then one final point, Minister, my team in Lagos was saying that people like investing in countries they like. Okay, so how do we increase familiarity of Nigeria with the investing community? And they had an idea that, look, can we get universities to do stints for students into Nigeria? And maybe it's for 3 weeks, or maybe it's for 4 weeks. And the more you do that, the more you will get a generation of investors who work in the city but would love to do more in Nigeria. And so I thought I'd leave with that, and very happy to answer questions later.
Thank you very much. Great idea there. Let me turn to our last panelist, and unfortunately, the time is running close, but I don't want the whole burden of the time savings to be on you. Lola Avaranti Ekugo, CEO of AfriBorder, and on the board of Trademark Africa. So you're an expert on the AfCFTA digital trade protocol. What are the opportunities? What are the obstacles? Strategically, what would you recommend?
Okay. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I lived in the UK for many years, schooled here. I'm now living in Nigeria, so it's just an honor to be here having this conversation. I want to commend the minister, our minister here. She's done so much work, still tired, but here, driving this conversation, and of course, OGI, the excellent work you're doing on the continent. I thought the panelists have said a lot, but maybe I should speak and maybe add a bit more color to what is actually happening as well. When we say access to markets, the AfCFTA will do that. But what we're really saying is, in my view, it's a bit like a trade, maybe also like an airport where you have things coming out and going in at the same time. We've talked about the 1.4 billion people market. The other day I was in Abidjan and I was having the most delicious mangoes. And I was thinking to myself, I wish there was a platform where, I could just sit in Nigeria or even here in the UK and order dried mangoes and it comes directly to me. Or the shea butter we have in Nigeria or Ghana, and it could be available anywhere to anyone. And I think that is really the power of what we have here with the AfCFTA. In terms of digital platforms, in terms of access to market. It's also the other way around where we have our talent. And we've spoken about the vast talent we have in Nigeria, the innovation and technology, the unicorns that we have available. And I was at a roundtable, I think that was a few weeks ago as well, with the BPOs. And the questions they were asking is, okay, we have the talent. How do we ensure that they're available everywhere? I think that the AfCFTA has a framework for that now, and I think it's clear. The opportunity is there. It's really now for progress, and the support, of course, we have from the UK and the rest of the world. Another key thing I wanted to highlight was around payments, and that's because at the moment, if I want to pay for something, so across Africa, about 80% of what happens is either in dollars, in terms of the currency, or euros, 80% of intra-African trade. It means that you're effectively traveling from, I want to make a trade with my neighbor in Ghana or Cote d'Ivoire, but I need to basically travel to America first. We're thinking about it literally, and then come back to actually be able to make that change, to make that trade. And I think these are opportunities for investment. These are the real issues that we have on ground. And we have, of course, opportunities from money points, as he mentioned, the PAPS integration that's happening now. And I think there are about 16 African countries now. But of course, trying to drive that adoption for the rest of the world, the rest of Africa. And I think these are the things that will really move the needle for us as we sort of trade with one another and of course with the rest of the world. In terms of how I see other things that I think we perhaps need to do more, the strategies around that we could adopt. I would say that one of the things I've seen, I mean, I sit on the board of Trademark Africa as well. And I think that one of the key things that's really helped with adoption of the protocol has really been the political will. And that is having, there's implementation, but there's also first the political will. And I think for me, I'm pleased to be a Nigerian and to have a minister here who's driving this conversation, because that means that effectively half of the work is really done. But when I look back on more, I guess, practical things that can happen, I think one of the key things we would say is needed is really more awareness. I think it was in February, ODI funded a workshop which I was able to assist and lead for Nigeria, which was around capacity build. And what we did essentially is tell people about the digital trade protocol, what it does, the benefits. And honestly, you could see that it was an eye-opener. We're all here assuming everyone understands the digital trade protocol. Everybody's yes. But what does it mean to you? What is the impact and how do you get involved? I think that those are areas that constantly, we need to talk about. How does the private sector get involved? What do they need to do practically? I'm trying to go quickly. Another thing, of course, that's important is around the policies. I mean, there's the AfCFTA, it's done, but in terms of localization of policies and identify the ones that are critical to really push the needle, like an e-commerce policy, for instance. If we're going to build like perhaps an Amazon for Africa, of course we need that essentially. So I think there's already work, happening, but of course we need to accelerate this, Nigeria and of course the rest of Africa. I think one thing that I've seen as well that's become extremely critical is a really, I would say, readily available data to really understand what is happening in each country. You find that in terms of demand and supply, many countries don't even know what this other country, my neighbor, is producing, what I essentially need to put my power in and supply. I give a quick example of my last visit to Zambia, where the president of Zambia mentioned that they had been importing salt from all over the world outside of Africa. But then the neighboring Botswana actually was producing salt. And they had to make a deliberate effort to actually make a directive that at least 80% of the salt that they actually import must be from Botswana. I think these are key things that have happened. I know just this week as well, Namibia made its first export on the AfCFTA to Nigeria for salt as well. Actually, I think the world consumes a lot of salt. I don't know. But I think we need that clear, readily available data on what is available, who needs what, so that we know what exactly it is that we, and I know that there's some effort on that as well in Nigeria, but perhaps more focus and perhaps more extended for the rest of Africa. Quickly, my last point around regional integration was around strategies. I think we need to really look within our regional blocks and see what we can actually do. AfCFTA is 54 countries, it's large, but then we can take, I would say, maybe pilots across. I mean, right now, one of the big corridors for us is the Lagos-Abidjan corridor. What can we actually do within that smaller space? We can actually see results and see impact, because I think now we have the political will. I think what we really need now is implementation and progress. That's what everyone wants to see. So I think we need to look at those items. I think the EAC has done a lot of work because they've sort of tried to work a lot around the corridor and make, a lot of impact there. Lastly, it's the race. I just wanted to, I want to just give just practical things that have happened as well, so that we can picture what it is that we're talking about. I think one of the key successes around digital and the power of technology has really been around the one-stop border posts. And if you're not familiar with the concept, it's really harmonizing two borders so that you're not literally going from one border, doing exactly the same thing, showing the same papers, and then going to another to do the same thing. And I mean, Trademark Africa has done a lot of work around that across East Africa. Recently, there's been the work around the Abidjan Ghana corridor, Newwick border. And I know that the FCD also just funded some computers and all to actually support the effort. I mean, this work has reduced the amount of border times and the amount of time people spend on border by 90%. Imagine you're trying to carry goods from one border to another, because digital and physical work together, and you have goods that are going to perish and you're going to spend 5 days trying to cross a border just to move to another country that's beside you. And I think this is really the power of technology, the power of the digital trade protocol. So I think the time is now. I'm really happy we're here once again, as I've said, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Lila, did you want to come in right away? Lots of ideas, very little time. We wanted to have sort of a broader discussion, probably with the time we have that won't really be possible, but Minister, you've had a lot of ideas coming to you. Any instant reactions, and then let me know from the floor if there's anything you want to, where you would like to intervene. Yeah, but please, Minister.
Thank you very much to the really articulate panelists. Those are key suggestions. I've taken copious notes. Some we've already been in discussions on. I just wanted to give some color, maybe a few practical examples of where we are in Nigeria, just in response to some of the things that have been said, and the feedback is also very well taken. So for digital trade and just helping businesses know where they are, we released in Lusaka about a month or 5 weeks ago our digital trade survey. We put out a survey for tech businesses in Nigeria, tech-enabled MSMEs, and we found exactly where they want to go in terms of AfCFTA across the continent. A lot of interest in Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa, Egypt, and Rwanda. So that's basically the footprint across various tech-enabled sectors. We also launched a new air cargo corridor for MSMEs across 13 southern and eastern African countries. Collaboration with Uganda Air and UNDP, both were with them. And to support that, to speak to your point, Lola, we released a market intelligence tool that told Nigerian MSMEs where their goods are in demand. So a lot of textiles, fashion, light manufacturing, food, a lot of snacks, plantain chips, light manufacturing, cosmetic products. We also had an inaugural West African Economic Summit, an initiative of Mr. President, and there our ministry had a deal room that galvanized discussions of about $400 million in 2 days. A lot of them to be de-risked by the AfrexIMs, IFC, Badia were in the room. It was and it spoke to a lot of these sectors. I didn't want to go too far into infrastructure, but since data rooms, data centers were mentioned, very important one, business opportunity, investment opportunity. And just to say on the contactless border, Nigeria and Benin at that summit signed an MOU. I actually signed with my counterpart, witnessed by both presidents. And I'll be in Benin Republic on the 17th of this month to start really fixing trade facilitation across the semi border. So I thought I'd put in some practical, footprint coloration to what we're doing. A lot going on, and this has been such an important and enlightening panel. So thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you very much, Dad. So we have a couple of minutes, especially if I kind of distill my closing remarks to 20 seconds. And we have one question from the floor. I have one which I'm going to read out from online, and if there's a third one, let's take that, and that should be fine. So the one online is from Claudette Benigo Amorigoye. There are loads of Nigerian tech talents currently in the UK, most of whom recently relocated to the UK and other countries. What is really being done to pool these talents together to build the Nigerian digital economy? So that's one question. Maybe somebody from the panel wants to pick it up, maybe the Honourable Minister. Your question.
My name's David Smith from British African Business Alliance. We're a diaspora-led business network in the UK, and we're looking at the role of the 2 million Nigerians here, 2 million plus Nigerians now, here, and the role that they can play. One of the major projects that we're involved with is the development or redevelopment of the Calabar and Port Harcourt railways through to Abuja. 10 states, 17 cities, 3 ports, on its way to the Chad border and the Niger border. We have an MOU with the Ministry of Transport for that, and that addresses some of the issues of the logistics that need to catch up with the accelerating digital footprint. Alongside that, we're putting 17 digital vocational colleges, which will look at the aspect of training that you were talking about. And that is being funded on the back of low-cost housing development. So we're taking young Nigerians from the side of the road, giving them artisan skills, entering into the digital marketplace as well, but actually doing that to enable the development of the railway, which will replace the narrow gauge railway put in 1913 by the UK at that stage. So quite a lot of things going on there, but most importantly, engaging with the 2 million Nigerians here in the projects that they want to bring that will open up business opportunities for UK PLC as well as for Nigeria.
Great, thank you. And that kind of jives a bit with the previous question, how to use the talent pool, the diaspora. There was one question from over here.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. So my name is Jobas Asalu. I'm Managing Director of AfCFTA Blended Finance Platform that supports SMEs across Africa to access concession funding, de-risk and leverage investment from the diaspora community. It's very similar questions to David. I'm keen to hear your perspective on the role that diaspora investment plays in this trade investment story and where there's potential bottlenecks in enabling that to happen.
Excellent. Thank you. So 3 questions really around the same. We have more questions coming in online. I'm not sure, Angela, what is sort of our.
Can maybe go over a little bit of co-sign a bit later, so it's probably like 10 minutes, is that okay?
Minister, Ambassador, 10 minutes? Is that okay? All right, let's do that.
Okay.
Let's chat.
Panag Dasgupta, Director of the GCC. Thanks to Honorable Minister. I think we are currently working in Nigeria on sustainable hospital project and renewable energy. So, and what we found throughout the journey, there are some policy issues and bureaucratic issues out there. If we can address so that it can easily, we can bring more investment in Nigeria. Particularly, I am keen to work in Nigeria because I have loads of friends here in London and over there also. Last week, mid of the June, I think I sat down one of the Abuja Federal Capital Minister, Honorable Minister also. So these areas actually particularly we are focusing, and I had a conversation with one of your colleagues. I think so potentially I can put in email also in future, like after this, if there is a chance, please, so that we can address on this. So on sustainable hospitals, either on the military side and also medical colleges, there are huge demands in Nigeria and Africa, and there are in fact investments are there. But the thing is, two parties, they don't know each other. And how do you mitigate risk? And also some kind of risk means radical elements and all, because Nigeria is a vast country. And most of us, we know Abuja or Lagos, but there are huge opportunity in northern part also. So we are actually writing white paper, Nigeria, dynamics. So it will be very good if we can also work in association in future, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So then last two are online by Dangan Rai. What is the current status of Nigeria's e-commerce policy and digital trade strategy as these form the foundational framework for attracting investors? So the status of the strategy. And John McNally says, great insights from the minister and the panelists. How to improve the digital economy while power generation supply is still unreliable across Nigeria. So the role of power, the eternal role of power. So with that, you have a 5-second intervention. Please go ahead.
I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if I should speak earlier because like everything was covered, but I work for the Commonwealth Secretariat. And in our work across Africa, we've of course discovered, I'm in the trade department, that a lot of effort needs to be placed on building capacity around MSMEs. Nigeria is one place that we have all agreed have very strong entrepreneurs, but the challenge is always access to finance and people saying, oh, your projects are not bankable. So there is passion, there's willingness, there's a whole lot of people getting to work, but how do we support them? Like Lola had said earlier, when they had an initial training, it was like an eye opener. We had a capacity building workshop with SMED and where we trained MSMEs and we're training them on regulatory standards. And I mean, you want to export, you want to be able to leverage e-commerce, but if you don't even know what your product should look like, we don't know what labeling, we're talking about CBAM now, and a whole lot of people are in the process where they're looking at, is this product sustainable? Where is it coming from? Is it green? Was there deforestation in producing it? And we have a whole lot of a large MSME, population who are unaware of any of these things. So I think that should be a major focus. And I believe it's actually mostly the lowest hanging fruit where you get immediate result from what you put in, or like policies, which is large, but you gather MSMEs who at a certain level, you can deal with them and get out a crop of people who are able to run with your plans.
Excellent. Thank you for the question. And in fact, there was reference to Alibaba earlier by Abhinav. If you look at that, what happened in China, that you had suddenly 100 million SMEs connected to the market, from anywhere in the country, and were suddenly able to produce for, not just sort of their neighbors, but for the whole country. That unleashed so much potential. So that's the potential of the digital economy, and you're of course very aware of that. Maybe, Minister, if you allow, so 30-second interventions from the panelists, and then we turn to you for sort of the closing remarks. Is that okay? Okay. So starting with Max, any reactions to the questions? Anything you would like to add?
Yeah, thank you. Very briefly on the aspect associated with diaspora and investment and the mobilization of capital, and particularly the resources. I mean, there are here in the UK from Nigeria. I mean, I have been working particularly on UK-Nigeria trade for a long time. I remember of our work that we have done to identify the barriers. And what we found is that the barriers that sometimes a Nigerian based, UK-based investor will find are not different than any other investor would eventually find. The only thing that it has is potentially a bit more of information of actually where are the opportunities. So I think that in potentially addressing those sort of issues and barriers is extremely important, where the digital economy and the environmental growth digital economy is a significant way of potentially addressing some of the barriers that investors have in the UK. Just to say that, I mean, still, I mean, and we have been hearing a lot of stories. Actually, by the way, thank you very much about those tips about potentially future IPOs that might become. I will be very basically looking forward to them. But actually, there is a lot of already going on the Nigerian-based investors and operators in the UK. And in terms actually to basically mobilizing them, I think there is already a lot of happening. But basically, what I was saying is actually facilitating the job, the investment is potentially the best way of doing it.
Thank you, Max. So digital actually is a solution to many of the problems that have been raised here. Ben, any reaction?
I'm just perhaps going to pick up on this Alibaba point and about sort of access to technology. Because one of the programs that we have run in Nigeria since about 2019, 2018 is the Digital Access Program, which is sort of public and private sector kind of focus in order to expand kind of inclusive and accessible sort of access to digital systems and enhance the digital ecosystem. Because I think so much of what we're talking about here, whether it be on the SME side, whether it be to the Alibaba China example that you I think gave spot on, is absolutely fundamental, right? Because I think the more that we can be doing on the UK sort of HMD side to be helping at almost like grassroots level, to be building that, because that's also where you're then building your pipeline, right? As it were, to be a bit sort of commercial and crude about it, about sort of your future entrepreneurs or your future tech champions who will change that, or whether it's just day to day to do your sort of day-to-day living, and that we need to data for.
Thank you. Nicola.
No, I'm fine, thank you.
You're fine.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe in the bilaterals over lunch. Then Abhinav?
Yeah, look, I'll just address quickly questions. I think one was on the diaspora in the UK tech and how to keep them engaged with each other. So look, there are tech communities. I know one called TN Niger, where tech entrepreneurs or people who've come on the global talent visa from Nigeria here, they can sign up, they get a peer group, role modeling, and just general support. So I would say there are these setups, and look, they're tech savvy, they will find a community of support. I think this isn't, I don't feel it's a big problem. I think it's more about encouragement and putting some of these names out there. So that's on one question which had come. I think there was a question on infrastructure that is still needed, whether it's around power, land, and so on. I mean, that is a task. Unfortunately, in Africa and in Nigeria, you need a full stack to become a tech company. So you can't just be a services company. You need to think of data centers. How do you your source of power, your source of security. That is the market reality. But the more we can do in the government, I think the better. So that is a problem that has to be fixed. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Lola.
I'll just wet the floor for our minister. Thank you both. Just quickly on some of the things I would say regarding some of the questions. One around the talent pool. I'm aware that there's work ongoing between the UK and Nigeria, especially around technology. I know that the Department for Business and Trade for the UK is doing some, I think they're doing like some work next, I think it's later this month, with startups here in the UK and bringing them to Nigeria so that they can, in a sense, cross-pollinate and of course, make that change. So I think there's work ongoing, perhaps a bit more could happen. In terms of the role of diaspora, especially around capital, I was at the Africa debate 2 days ago now. And I think one of the things that came out of that was really around patient capital. And I think if anyone can have patient capital, it should be diaspora who are living here to make that, real impact. I was also going to speak just very quickly on the policies and things on ground. At the ODI event that was a few months ago, the e-commerce policy, the team working on it presented their work there. I think it's still ongoing, not finished, but I know they were taking expectations on, just getting feedback from people. In terms of power, I just want to say quickly, of course, I don't have all the answers, but I think solar would be a great way to actually solve many of the power issues in Nigeria. And I know that there's been work around ITANA, which is a special economic zone. I think our commissioner for Lagos State is here as well. And they've done some work around creating a special economic zone to allow startups sort of work independent of all the issues, I guess, that are happening, across the country. And I think perhaps more of that will help the cross coordination of the clean technology in the AfCFTA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lola. Now over to you, Minister.
Well, I wish I had all day. What I'm sensing is a bit of information asymmetry. We're talking about the challenges we see and what we think should happen. And there's a whole bunch of things that I can tell you are already happening. Not all done, but by far, everything I see on this list with talent relocation, Ifeoluwa Olubufumi is here right now. She supports tech startups in the UK with all this connection and just consulting to them. So there are a lot of connectivity and both enabled by Nigeria and UK governments. There have been a number of initiatives. The Foreign Affairs Minister had one with the MP Florence about 2-3 months ago. And then there's been several other we've had a Jollof and Ginger event at least twice, one in Lusaka, one in Nigeria. And so connectivity, I don't really think is a problem. Pulling them together, we're really happy to release them to the world, knowing that they'll always come back home. And that's where you have the dual listing. That's where you can borrow money points, but at the end of the day, they're going to come back home. So I think it's great. And that's where the beauty of the global community and trade and investment and these linkages like what we're having today established. So in terms of talent and relocation and pulling them together, that is organic. And whenever they need the support, that's why we turn up here. That's why we do the programs that we do together. And that is having quite a bit of momentum. And that's similar to the infrastructure that David spoke about. I didn't want to go too far out, but several things ongoing, including digital public infrastructure like Nigeria's national single window infrastructure, the rail projects, even across, because we're focusing on digital and AfCFTA. I could have also talked about the gas pipeline, Nigeria, Morocco. There's several infrastructure projects, whether within Nigeria, within the West African sub-region, or across the entire continent that have been facilitated by the AfCFTA Secretariat, just linkages. Etona, Africa's first digital free zone. I have the privilege of supporting that intervention. Mr. President chairs a council that's breaking down the regulatory barriers for them, creating a space for them in Alaro City. It's already on ground, it's already running. So this is not ideation. That's the point that I'm trying to make here, that catalyzing diaspora capital, patient capital. Lagos alone this year has hosted the Africa Venture Capital Group Association very successfully about 3 months ago. The work with the City UK and Lagos State government, we haven't even touched on that, extensive. The team was in my office in Abuja about a month ago. Nigeria, the Sovereign Investment Authority, also hosted African Sovereign Wealth Authorities in Abuja about 3 weeks ago. We haven't even discussed Afrexim Bank and AFDB, the development financial institutions, and catalyzing capital onto the continent for the continent. And then before we talk about inviting investors to join us in what we definitely need to lead for ourselves. And that takes to renewable energy, sustainable. If I talk about the pillars in which the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment are there, I would mention several things. That's one of our pillars, but the West African Economic Summit deal room I mentioned, a lot of infrastructure and energy projects. And so speaking about power, speaking about energy and improving this, every challenge remains an investment opportunity and a sizable and profitable one. So I urge investors to move quickly. In terms of e-commerce policy, that's also being socialized around the country. The draft is actually before my desk. and we're taking that to the Federal Executive Council. Digital trade policy as well. I would add intellectual property. That one is already finalized and will be before the Fed shortly. That speaks very strongly to the creative economy and also the startup community. So building capacity, that is ongoing. It happens like every day. So it's not something that happens once and then it's okay. So NEPC has virtual sessions, Smith and Son, all the agencies really under the ministry, but it's never enough. In fact, on the 15th, we have a digital investment summit in Abuja, speaking to the medium to larger businesses, the manufacturers, and how they would export across the region. The point is that from nano all the way to our platinum, which gross over $1 billion per annum in revenue, there's different strategies. At Abidjan, at the CEO forum, about 6 weeks ago, only 17% of CEOs said that they were really sort of pushing on AfCFTA. So this domestic investment summit will also be speaking to them. So Hans, without derailing you too further, the point is that so much is going on. My main message would be everything you think is already happening. So let's share information and let's get really into the operationalization of what we want to see happen. The years have gone. Thank you.
Well, Minister, you have given sort of an excellent summary, a very concrete summary of the discussion, and in particular, you've kind of given shape to your call at the beginning that we need to move from talk to action. In fact, the action is underway. What you've taken from this discussion today, and probably from every discussion that you are in these days, is the incredible interest in what's going on in Nigeria, the incredible interest in the potential, the interest in what you're doing with pushing the boundaries into the continent. And somebody said Nigeria is a powerhouse, and this is what I think we all see is becoming real. And so we're really very grateful for that you spent this time with us, that you gave us these insights. I want to emphasize one or two things about the spirit in which this is happening. It was kind of interesting. One is there's the spirit of partnership. Nigeria seen as a very potent partner for the UK, for businesses, for others. It's that notion of partnership, that notion of the two-way street. That is the relationship. I think Nicola mentioned at the beginning the importance of a hard-headed approach. Only a hard-headed business-like approach is going to be sustainable. We're seeing this business-like approach being brought to this topic, and with that, really the expectation that this is going to open a big new chapter for Nigeria. So thank you for giving us your insights into that. ODI, of course, is going to try to continue being helpful through the CETA program and others, and all the people around this table. Be very, very happy to be accompanying you on this path. With that, I want to thank the panelists. I think this was a really, really insightful panel. And I want to give a big, big thanks to the Honorable Minister, to the Ambassador for being with us today and giving us all these insights. So, thank you. With that, we have a bit of a lunch out there and the opportunity for whoever can stay around to continue this conversation.